How's it going, everybody? My name is Infamous Isaac. I'm here with a video on Black Panther 1 and 2. So this first part of the video is going to be only about Black Panther 1 because I'm recording this only having just watched that. And then the second part of the video is going to be me talking about Black Panther 2 since that came out last year. And I haven't gotten a chance to watch it, so I wanted to combine the two since I already watched Black Panther 1 like a long time ago, back when it came out. So it's just like I'd rather combine the two for the sake of ease, honestly, for me, and also so I don't have to release a video for Black Panther 1 and then release another one for Black Panther 2. I just felt honestly that it was unnecessary. They're gonna be in one video instead of how I usually do it, where they're each their own video. Since so far this duology is only two. But regardless, for Black Panther 1, I'm gonna get into the spoilers. Again, I already watched it, so some of this or a lot of this isn't really new to me. But it's been 5 years since I watched it, so it's a nice refresher going into the second movie. So for non-spoilers, this movie, since I already watched it, I wasn't impressed by much of it. But when I first watched it, I was having the time of my life, and it was because I was watching it with friends all the way back like in 2018, and I had a blast when I first watched it. Now rewatching it, I have to say that the music is great. I'll always say that because the Black Panther soundtrack is amazing. Tribal instruments, or with the album collaborative album that TDE did for the soundtrack, or anything like the cinematic soundtracks that they always have in movies. I thought it was great. Definitely one of my favorites for sure because I remember some songs from the soundtrack that were just like, man, this hits. The fights, I thought they were uh, like they're Marvel standard for sure. It didn't really impress me. Like if I was looking at like John Wick, I was like, bro, that fighting is insane. And you look at this, it's like, hey, I mean, they're fighting. I'm not really engaged or interested. I'm more interested in the story of what's going on. And the story itself, it was good. I didn't feel like there was any issues with it. I thought they handled it pretty well. And I thought that was cool. So far, probably the besides the soundtrack, I thought the story was good. It was not passable, but it was enjoyable to say the least. Because that's definitely one thing that I like going back. But overall, this movie just feels like a standard Marvel movie. This movie came out, literally people were going around saying Wakanda forever, like it actually gave him superpowers, bro. And I was one of them. I was saying it too, because that movie made you feel, bro. It really made you feel. And with the star-studded cast too, like it was just bound to get popularity. But for me, looking back on it now, it's just like this movie to me is a 6 out of 10. It's not a bad movie by any sense of the imagination. It's just all right. I didn't have any overwhelming complaints with it. I didn't have any overwhelming positives though, except for the music and the story being good. So it's just like this movie's all right. It's an inoffensive movie that I don't mind. And I just hope that the sequel is better, 'cause that it leaves more of an impression on me. Because when I watched it the first time, it left an impression on me. When I watched it now, it really didn't, like, at all. Even my favorite parts were kind of underwhelming. But for right now, it's a 6.5 to a 7 out of 10. Alright, so no matter how old the movie is, I have to always say this. If you don't want to be spoiled for Black Panther, the first one, leave now and go watch the movie whenever you can. And then if you want, you can come back and hear my opinion on it. If not, then hey, I mean, it is what it is, right? But spoiler section, beginning. So this movie takes place after Civil War in the Avengers timeline, with Civil War being a Captain America movie. And in that movie, T'Challa's father, T'Chaka, died. He died in an explosion, right? And so this is 2 years later, like in real life, and they buried him. They had a whole ceremony, and now they have to crown a new king, and that king is T'Challa. And in this beginning, they have T'Challa basically getting inaugurated. You have a ceremony where all five of the tribes can put up a warrior, and if they have a warrior that wants to contend for the king spot, then they fight and they take the challenge, and you either yield or you die. And only one person went up for the battle, and it was a person from the mountain tribe. He went up, he got cooked. I'll be honest, and then that was the end of it. T'Challa became king. And so, lingering plot, excuse me, is a dude from London, from Britain, who is an arms dealer, and he's dealing with a guy from America, from Oakland, right? And this guy, like, they want his head on a platter. Wakanda wants his head on a platter. And so T'Challa, in the name of Wakabi, goes out to get this guy, right? And they go to Busan. And so it's this crazy action set piece in South Korea. And it was it was alright to me, honestly. I didn't really like it that much. One thing I should mention though, I should not neglect this at all. Wakanda, it looks just beautiful, insanely beautiful. I feel like I'm watching Avatar at some points with how beautiful this place looks with the sci-fi mix. It blends together so well. Yeah, the normal parts of Africa where you see how their architecture is built, their culture, the tools that they have, the food and the dress wear and everything, right? Just the general culture. And you have the Wakanda mix where they mix it with the future tech, with the Avengers type future tech. And it's just such a nice blend. It feels like a celebration of just African culture. And I'm not African, I can't speak on it, but this is definitely a nice lens into the culture because I don't know anything about it. But regardless, they're in Busan, and an arms deal is about to go on between a representative of the U.S. and an arms dealer. It goes south very quickly. T'Challa, his ex-girlfriend, and his retainer are there, and they just have this crazy car chase. I really enjoyed it, honestly. There was a moment in it where Kendrick Lamar and Vince Staples started playing, and I don't like the song now, but when I first watched it, that was like a formative memory for me. So they actually managed to capture the arms dealer, and so they interrogate him, and they find out that he knows about the vibranium in Wakanda, and the reason he finds out is because somebody that he's in contact with. And there's a scene in the museum earlier in the movie that shows who that person is, and we'll learn more about him later. The people that work with him come to rescue him, and they bust him out. T'Challa's there. He tries to go after the people that rescued him. It doesn't work, and the U.S. representative gets shot in the spine. His name is Agent Everest Ross or something like that, and he gets brought over to Wakanda to be healed and saved by T'Challa's order, right? And so meanwhile, the arms dealer, he's saved and all that, but in reality, the person that got him was Killmonger, the main bad guy of the movie, and he kills everybody there. And so now he's going over to Wakanda. So this is where things get crazy because Killmonger shows up to Wakanda, and Wakabi, one of the people that is in the tribes, he talks to T'Challa. He's like, "Yo, did you get him? Did you get the guy?" And T'Challa's like, "Nah, he just barely got away." And this upsets him because he's like, "Yo, your father did nothing, and now I thought you were gonna change that, but you didn't. It's more of the same." And so it definitely like struck a chord with him for sure. But then you have Killmonger showing up and talking to Wakabi. He's just like, "Yo, I killed the guy that you wanted dead." And so he issues a challenge towards T'Challa, and T'Challa's like, "Yeah, sure, I accept," because he learned that his father killed Killmonger's father. Killmonger and T'Challa are cousins, and the challenge happens. T'Challa loses, actually, because everybody thought that he was gonna win. Nope, he got cooked. It was crazy. And Zuri, which was one of T'Chaka's retainers and all that, he died. He got cooked, and he was actually overseeing T'Challa's inauguration as well. So he's been there since the beginning of the movie. So Killmonger throws off T'Challa off of the waterfall after he beats him, and he becomes the new king of Wakanda, becoming the new Black Panther, right? And his goal is basically to spread weapons all around the radicalist groups that he has assembled, and they're gonna basically just overtake the world and make sure that black people have a voice in a fight. You know, they're able to fight back against the people who oppress them, especially in like California, where since the flashback happened in the 90s when his father was killed, when riots were just happening all over, and it was just a bunch of racism going on around the U.S. overall. So he's just ready to fight back, because his father wanted to do the same. And T'Challa, he's found by the mountain tribe that challenged him in the beginning of the movie, and his family, his sister, his mother, his ex-girlfriend, and Agent Ross all go to the mountain tribe to basically get the leader to take the fruit and to challenge Killmonger. But then they find out that T'Challa's there, and so they give the fruit to T'Challa instead, and now they go and fight Killmonger without the mountain people's help. But they realize like later on they're gonna show up because it's scripted. So T'Challa goes to challenge Killmonger again. Killmonger's just like, that challenge is over, dog. Like I won, it's over. And so T'Challa's just like, but dog, I'ma kill you. And then they start beefing with each other. It's just a giant war going on in Wakanda. It's crazy. A bunch of factions are fighting. The mountain people, like I said, show up. There's just beef everywhere, and it all boils down to T'Challa versus Killmonger. And T'Challa, he has complete understanding of what Killmonger's trying to do. It's more pity and sympathy instead of like, oh, I'm gonna join you, because his father, T'Challa's father, made the wrong choice. Instead of taking Killmonger with him to Wakanda, he left him there to preserve Wakanda's secrecy, because Wakanda is a country that's hidden from the world. They know what Wakanda is, but they don't know that it's a super advanced tech society, you know? So he had, oh, in his words, he had to leave him there. T'Challa disagrees. And so he says that, like, this is a monster of your own creating, you know, I'm gonna stop him, but I'm gonna prevent things from happening like this ever again. You know, I'm gonna change the ways. And so he beats Killmonger in a crazy fight, a really cool fight, and a nice scene where they're having a heart to heart about how he just wishes that his father could have been able to bring him to Wakanda instead of things turning out like this. And he dies, you know, because T'Challa killed him. And then T'Challa gets inaugurated again. He goes to Oakland and he makes a memorial for Killmonger, basically celebrating his life instead of mourning it, you know. And it basically ends with the after credit scene being Bucky showing up in Wakanda. He's like, bro, what the heck happened? I forgot what happened in Civil War. But regardless, that's the end of Black Panther. Overall, it's a cool movie. Not my cup of tea. I thought it was just all right. It wasn't overly impressive, but it wasn't overly bad either. So it's just like it's an all right movie. You can definitely derive some enjoyment from it. I just thought it was a fun watch, a fun rewatch, and I got my enjoyment out of it the first time. Second time, not so much. But that's where I'm hoping the second movie picks it up, you know? Chadwick Boseman passed away before the second movie could be filmed, so it's just like, God rest his soul. So it's gonna be a completely different main character. It's gonna be nutty. But yeah, now it's time for the second movie. I'll give you guys opinions on that after I watch it. So I wanted to add one more thing to the video before I talk about Black Panther 2, and that was the voice acting and some other stuff like some messages. So the voice acting was either really stilted or really good and really emotional, you know. Sometimes, for example, Michael B. Jordan, right? His voice acting came off really powerful or really emotional and impactful. You know, you could feel the emotion behind Killmonger. But then you have the other side where it felt like, man, this is so stilted. It just doesn't feel right. It feels so weird because it's not like it ruined the performance for me, but I did notice it sometimes. It was like, dog, what happened with this take? I don't know. And I'm not trying to claim to be a professional, not at all. I'm really just pointing out what I heard, right? But to me, that's something that stuck out to me. And it felt weird, you know. On the other hand, you have the messages, right? And I don't like talking about it because politics are heavily involved in this messaging because it's just the history of the United States. All the buzz and the hype that was coming around this movie for it being, you know, Black Panther, like a beloved superhero, but also having like a predominantly black cast, meaning that it just this opens up avenues for more races and more castings like this because Hollywood is a predominantly white area, you know, like it in movie industry. So having this movie be so successful, it just shows like, hey man, like there's room for this and there should be room for this and stuff like that for racial equality and all that. And this movie itself with the messaging is just basically like, yo, there's a lot of history with black people in the world and just overall like in Africa or the US or anywhere, right? And there's a lot of pain in that. But change only comes when you change yourself and when you differ from your ancestors, right? And T'Challa did that. He changed the way he handled things compared to his father. And it's overall it's a really powerful message. There is thought and meaning behind the first movie. And this all leads me to the release of Black Panther 2 all the way in 2022, 4 years later, with Chadwick Boseman's unfortunate passing back in 2020. And Marvel actually decided not to recast the role of Black Panther, which I thought was a great decision, as long as it was handled right. And I'll get into how I feel about how it was handled in the spoiler section, but right now, for the spoiler free section of this movie, this part, this movie was great. I genuinely feel like overall Black Panther 2 was an improvement on the first movie in a lot of ways. I genuinely feel a lot better about talking about this movie because Black Panther 1, I just felt bored watching it, you know. I didn't feel hype, I didn't feel any vested interest, I was just watching it. And granted, that might be because I already watched it like 4 years ago, but this movie, I felt a lot of investment. I was super interested in what was going on. And you have the story, I feel like it's 10 times better than the original Black Panther. The music kept that same vibe that I got from the original Black Panther 1 soundtrack. The visuals were great. They they're just stellar, and that's just what you're going to get from Marvel. Usually their overworked CGI artists are going to do a great job. So it's just like that's no surprise. The characters, the character writing especially, this it was amazing, genuinely amazing, and it was surprising for me how the story went because I'm not gonna go into the plot, but who Black Panther was going to be after Chadwick Boseman's passing was just like up in the air, and you could guess who it would be, but then seeing how it happened in the movie was really cool. Like I have a lot of positives to say about this movie, most of them in the spoiler section. But one of my biggest drawbacks for this movie is the fact that it's just so long. And I don't usually say that because I love long movies. You know, like some of my favorite long movies, like Avatar or Dune or stuff like that. They're like almost 3 hours long. You know, or they are 3 hours long. But this movie felt long because there was a lot of unnecessary stuff that could have been taken out, and it could have been reduced to like a 2 hour and 20 minute movie instead of a 2 hour and 40 minute movie because it was again like you feel it, you really feel it, even if you're interested. And I just wish that it just cut back on some of the scenes because in reality, not all of them needed to be there. While it did help build the world and us understanding it, it just felt like a little too unnecessary, and it kind of started to drag during like the first half of the movie. But then in the second half of the movie is when things really just pick up and they go wild. The villain I thought was great. I liked him better than the first villain in the first movie, honestly. The the main characters, I thought they were solid. Overall, the characters just felt like they were facing a really real and relatable problem in the form of grief, you know. And I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that because it shows how human these characters are, even if they have superpowers, even if they have crazy advanced technology. They're still human. They're still vulnerable, and they can die just like us, you know. So it still means that people should value life as much as you can, because you never know when it could be taken away, whether it's by an enemy attacking or whether it's by a disease. But this movie, definitely to me like a 7.5 out of 10. I enjoyed it a lot more than Black Panther 1. And I'm glad because I really wanted to. Black Panther 1 was just to me so like it was just alright. But seeing this was like, man, this is fire. This is genuinely a fire movie. And I can say that it didn't feel like a Marvel movie. It felt so dark sometimes and so real. And it was enjoyable. It's not like a perfect 10 out of 10 movie. I can definitely say that. It's definitely worth a 7. So I'll definitely give it a 7.5 at the least. And the acting, as well as I mentioned earlier, the acting definitely got better. I feel like the actors here just they really put in the emotion in their roles. Even with Michael B. Jordan, he felt like he was delivering his lines as powerfully as he could. So it was like, man, this movie just feels like an improvement overall, and I enjoyed that. So, obligatory spoiler warning, you know. I am going to go into spoilers. This movie is relatively new still, so I don't want to spoil it if you haven't watched it yet. So, go and watch that or stop watching the video if you don't plan on watching it soon. And if you do watch it, then if you feel like you want to come back, then I'll always be here, you know. But that aside, this movie basically picks up where T'Challa, Chadwick Boseman, passed away, right? He had a disease, and when he revealed it, it was too late. He passed away. And Chadwick Boseman isn't going to show up in the movie. They started filming after he passed away, so we're only going to see flashbacks of him, which really sucks. But at the same time, it's like, what can you do? You know, you just take what you can get and you accept it, especially with the when it comes in the form of death, you know. But in the beginning of the movie, they just have a really nice, like, 10-minute scene of them having a funeral for him and seeing the events as to what they led up to that funeral and all that. And it was a beautiful. ceremonious and enjoyable for your funeral. It was celebrating his life instead of mourning his death, you know. Everybody was wearing white instead of black, which I think is a nice touch because different cultures have different colors for death. Like the US has black, but other cultures have, like Africa, have white, celebrating his life. And that's how the movie starts, you know. Rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman. But that's how the movie starts. And after that, it's 1 year later, it's a 1 year time skip. And now we have Churi, who is still in her lab. The Queen of Wakanda, aka T'Challa's mother, took over. And now we're just basically seeing the repercussions of T'Challa's actions, where he isn't there to lead, so he isn't there to make the decisions about opening up Wakanda to the world. And now everybody's distrusting of them because they have this rare vibranium metal to themselves and they don't want to share it. And then everybody is just like, that seems unfair, you know, like we have trade deals made up with these people. Why aren't they upholding their end of the deal? At the end of the day, it always boils down to we're not hiding vibranium for you because of the metal itself. The prospect of vibranium leaving Wakanda and getting into the hands of the wrong people potentially is just, it poses too big of a danger. So Wakanda just would rather avoid it. And they want to open up international affairs, but at the same time, you know, not excuse me, T'Challa isn't there to oversee them, so it's harder, you know. Back in Wakanda, though, they're basically just trying to find a way to bring back the Black Panthers since they don't have the flowers anymore since Killmonger or yeah yeah Killmonger burned them in the last movie, so they don't have a way of regrowing them, right? And Shuri is the closest person to be able to do that because she could 3D print it. And so she's trying to work on that, but she gave up after her brother passed away. And now she's just making more technology. They're still mourning the loss of T'Challa, like her mom and Shuri herself. And it hurts, you know. You can definitely see the pain and the impact that that loss had, especially because it came so soon after her father's death and all that. Like, they weren't even like 2 years apart, if I remember. So it's definitely a struggle to move forward, but they're doing it. And there's another plot going on, right, where there's this group of people that are going about and they're destroying. So there's this other group going around, right, and people mistake them for Wakandans because they're near Wakandan territory and they're mining vibranium and rare metals, right? But it's not. It's actually a mining group, right? And we'll learn more about them later. And we see them actually destroy like a submarine, or not a submarine, but like a mining facility in the sea in the beginning of the movie. And so, to not T'Challa, Shuri and her mom go to like a an important area in Wakanda to mourn their brother, right, and their son. And then one of the people, the leader of the Mayan tribe, Namor, shows up and he's just like, "Dog, so I'm gonna go to war with the world, and if you guys want to stay safe, you'll join us. If not, then you'll die." And then they're just like, "Dog, what? What are you talking about?" And he's just like, "Think it over. I'm just saying." One of the demands that Namor has is to bring the scientists who built the machine. And so Shuri and Okoye, one of the generals for Wakanda, go to the US. They go to Cambridge, Massachusetts, right? And they find a 19-year-old girl who built it. In reality, she didn't build it. It was more that the US took the schematics that she had for a class project and they used them without her consent. So she didn't get a penny from any of that, you know? Pretty messed up. But they get her and they basically just, the goal is to bring her back to Wakanda, right? But they aren't able to do that because Namor's people show up and they're trying to kill her so that they don't have any more incidents like this happening because the mining facility was near Namor's area, the Atlantic Ocean. So they don't want that happening again. And they have this huge fight going on in the middle of the night in Cambridge. The CIA are there. All of them are fighting. It's crazy. And it leads to Shuri and Riri, who's the college student. It leads to them falling off of the bridge and being taken to Namor's, like his homeland, right? Meanwhile, Okoye is basically just left there stranded. She goes back to Wakanda, and all this is going crazy, right? So she gets stripped of her rank and just basically punished for it, right? For losing the queen's daughter. And everybody feels like it's a bit harsh, but she's just like, "Dog, I have lost my husband, my son, and now my daughter could possibly be dead. You're telling me that it's harsh You're crazy. We cut to Judy where she's at, and it's underwater. And we find out that the people that the race that he's a part of were Mayans in the Spanish conquest, right? In the Spanish conquistador era, who were basically just pillaged and the smallpox took over. And they prayed to Chalk to give him, excuse me, to give them a way to survive. And they all died, but were reborn as this new race, right? And they basically can swim underwater and breathe underwater. They're basically like, actually, a better comparison is that they're fishmen and women. They can breathe underwater, but they can't breathe outside, and so they need face masks in water. But Namor actually is an exception. He was born with wings and is able to breathe in water and outside of water. He's basically, well, not basically. He's Kukulkan. Khan. He's revered as Kukulkan, Khan, and he's the king. He's been alive for. Namor's been around since the 1500s, so he's been doing this for a while. And he's telling all this to Chirdy and just telling her the history of his people. And the reason for it is because he wants, again, for her and Wakanda to come and help him to take over the world so that the conquerors, can be conquered and they have a way of life, their way of life secured. And Shuri, of course, disagrees with this and he's just like, yo, listen, either you do this or you don't. Either way, I'm going to do it. And if you don't do it, I'm going to come after you guys first. While all this stuff is going on with Shuri, they have T'Challa's ex-girlfriend. They have her go on a mission to find Shuri, and she manages to find her. She's in Haiti, and then she goes to South America to find her. They get her back. She kills two people, which basically incites war. And Shuri mentions this too, like, Doc, you don't know what you're doing. Why are you doing this? And so they take her back to Wakanda. She's stressing out because she doesn't know what to do. All this is crazy, right? And so they have Riri there. They're basically keeping her safe as best as they can. And then, no surprise, Namor attacks Wakanda, right? And it's a really sad scene. All these people are just experiencing this crazy attack for no reason. And Namor shows up. He attacks her. The queen is dead, leaving only Shuri. From 3 years ago, in like this movie's time, where all of her family was alive, to now where everybody is dead. She is the last one standing from her tribe, right? From her family. And so she's just losing it. She's so tired. She is upset. She wants vengeance and she wants power. So she manages to recreate the flower that they need to have the Black Panther ceremony because Namor gave her a bracelet that had vibranium in it, just the same properties that were needed to make the flower, right? And so she undergoes the ritual. She isn't buried, but instead she's just put in a table in her office, and she drinks the purple liquid, and then she gets taken to the ancestral plane, right? And here you would expect T'Challa or her dad or her mom for somebody to show up, but instead it's Killmonger. He shows up instead. Because you gotta remember, even though he was king for like a day or two, he still got inaugurated into it and is basically there for eternity. And so he's talking to her and he's just like, yo, you and I are similar, more similar than you think. Are you gonna be noble? Are you gonna be like me? Are you gonna take the high road or the low road? Are you gonna kill him? Or are you gonna let him walk? His father was a hypocrite, T'Challa was too noble, and his mom couldn't do it. Or excuse me, her mom couldn't do it. And so he presents her with a choice. What are you going to do? How are you going to handle this power that you're given now? And Shuri, after she wakes up, she becomes the Black Panther. She gets the suit, she gets empowered, and she's ready for war with Namor. Shuri goes to M'Baku, and she's just basically like, yo, I need your help. And so he's like, yeah, sure, I promised your brother I'd watch over you, so I'll do it. But not for vengeance. And so she's like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it for vengeance. And he's like, all right, just know what comes with that. And so they leave and they all prepare to attack Namor basically by dragging him out into the sea and exposing his weakness, which is basically put him in a dry area and the man is cooked completely. And so this is where the final part of the movie happens, this giant war between Namor and Shuri, and they're both tribes representing them and all that. And so battle goes crazy. Turns out that Riri is actually Ironheart, which is a character in like the Iron Man lore and all that. And so her suit is being made, and that's how it connects to Ironheart itself being made, like the show. Which, it's just like it is what it is. I'm probably not gonna watch it, so I don't really care. But I just think that like that is cool, seeing the origins being here. But the battle's crazy. You have Okoye coming back and some of her people from the general, like I guess group, coming back, and it's beef. It's awesome. Wakanda's on the back foot though because they just have less members and they're in the enemy territory since anywhere in water is the enemy territory. But Namor and Shuri get left alone, basically bring him to a desert, and they're just beefing with each other. And Shuri almost loses, but she manages to get the upper hand and get Namor on the back foot, right? And she has a chance to kill him, but she remembers what was said in the ancestral plane, and she chooses the noble route instead of the vengeance route, sparing Namor and swearing that they will protect you as long as you stop this, all right? Like, we will have an alliance. And so he agrees to it. He yields. And this leads to the end of the movie where they're seen together. The war ends. The alliance is made. Shuri is now the Black Panther. She brings Riri home and she goes to Haiti, right? For the final scene in the movie where she burns T'Challa's funeral clothes. And she sits there crying. And Naki is just like, yo, you got this. And that's the end of the movie. Shuri is there crying on the beach, remembering her brother, mourning the loss, but celebrating his life, and just overall coming to terms with the fact that he's gone. Her mother is gone. Her father is gone. And all she can do is just keep moving forward as the queen of Wakanda. And let me tell you guys, I thought that her story arc throughout this movie was one of the best I've ever seen in a Marvel movie, like except for Spider-Man. But Shuri in this movie was so good, and it feels like it was planned from the start that she was going to become Black Panther. You have like, God rest his soul, like if he was alive when they made it, like I wonder how the script would have gone, whether she would have become the Black Panther at the end of the trilogy or not, because it feels so natural, It made the best story possible that they could, and it was great. Like, granted, Namor could have been better. His design was really weird looking, but the actor himself was great. I thought Namor's actor was amazing. Gotta give him props. And just overall, again, the actors had just had a great performance all around. I don't have any complaints about how they performed compared to last time. So Michael B. Jordan a little bit, but I got used to it, so it's like, yeah, it is what it is. But the story was amazing. I thought it was great. Way better than Black Panther one. I thought it was awesome. This movie was fire. It's not an 8 for me because it still is held back. And that's partly due to the fact that it just runs for so long. But it definitely is a 7.5, a more positive review than what I thought of Black Panther 1. I actually feel something when talking about this movie instead of Black Panther 1, where I was just indifferent. And that's definitely the best thing I can say about it. I'm not indifferent about it. And I'm excited to see what happens with Black Panther next because Shuri was just such a cool Black Panther. And I can't wait to see more of her. Her actor delivered in spades, bro. It was awesome. And just overall, I can't wait. I cannot wait to see what happens next with this series. So, yeah, Black Panther 3, hopefully I'll be able to watch it whenever that happens or if it does happen. And that basically marks the end of this duology. I'm glad I watched the second one. I'm glad I took the time to rewatch these. This video is gonna run long for sure, but it's not like it's my longest video. Like, I've had videos 55 minutes and above, so it's like it is what it is. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about it. Black Panther 2, seal of approval. Black Panther 1, could have been better, could have been worse, so it is what it is. And yeah, next we have some more movies coming up. I still have some more movies to talk about. It's basically like Marvel week on the channel right now. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Hope y'all enjoy. I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.